Every year on the 25th of January, in cities all across the United States, Americans put on tartan, pour whiskey, and stand up to read a 200-year-old poem out loud to a plate of food. Bagpipes play, somebody makes a speech, and then everyone eats the dish that poem was written about, except they don't. Because what's on that plate is not haggis. Not really. Not by any definition a Scot would accept. The real thing has been illegal in America for over 50 years. And here's the strange part, the part that makes this whole thing worth an episode. The rule that banned it does not mention haggis. It does not mention Scotland. So who was it written for? Welcome to Poison Pantry. Let's open the file on haggis. Start with what haggis actually is, because if you've heard of it at all, you've probably heard it used as a punchline. You take the heart, the liver and the lungs of a sheep. You mince them with oatmeal, suet, onion, stock and a lot of black pepper. And you cook the whole thing inside the animal's stomach. Now, that sounds extreme until you remember what you're looking at. This is poverty food. When a family killed a sheep, the muscle could be preserved and stretched through the winter. The organs couldn't. They spoiled within days. So you ate those first, immediately, all together, and you used the stomach because you had one. And buying a pot was not an option. Nothing wasted, nothing thrown away. That's the whole dish. And then in 1786, a farmer named Robert Burns wrote a poem to it, addressing this thing on the table as the great chieftain of the pudding race. And something ordinary turned into something else entirely. A dish stopped being food and became a flag. And the flag traveled. Millions of Americans claimed Scottish ancestry, and they brought Burns Night with them across the Atlantic. The whole ritual intact, the same date, the same poem, the same plate carried in to the sound of pipes. You'll find it celebrated in cities all over the United States, every single year, and it has been for generations. For most of that time, nothing stood in the way. You could make it, you could buy it, you could ship it in from Edinburgh. Here's what most people miss though. The thing that finally ended it had nothing to do with Scotland, nothing to do with tradition, and nothing to do with anybody objecting to the dish. It came from a completely different direction, from a room where nobody was thinking about dinner at all. So let's be clear about what kind of case this is, because it is not the usual one for this channel. Nobody was poisoned by haggis. There is no outbreak, no scandal, no cover-up. What happened here was a regulation, and the reasoning behind it is genuinely defensible, which is exactly what makes it so hard to argue with. Here it is, and I'll say it once. During slaughter, fluid from the animal's digestive tract can end up in the lungs. Lungs also collect more from the air an animal breathed than the other organs do. That is the case against them. That's it. That's the whole argument, and you can decide for yourself how much weight it carries. But now here's the part that matters for the dish, and it's the thing nobody outside Scotland seems to understand. Lung is not in haggis for flavour, it's in there for structure. Lung tissue is full of air, and when it's minced through the mixture it keeps everything loose and open. So cooked haggis crumbles apart under your fork. Take the lung out and the whole thing tightens into a dense, heavy paste. So when Scots tell you a lungless version isn't real haggis, they are not being romantic about it. They are describing a different food. Which brings us to what was actually lost, and I want to be careful here, because this isn't a body count. Nobody died. No American got sick from a plate of haggis, and no lawsuit was ever filed. Picture the scene, because it happens every January. A Scottish-American family, third or fourth generation, gathers for Burns Night. The damage was quieter than that, and it landed on people who were never the target of anything. Someone reads the poem their great-grandfather read, the pipes play, and what gets carried in and set on that table is a dish their great-grandparents would not recognize as the thing the poem is about. Not because anyone objected to it, not because it hurt anybody. Because of a sentence written in an office in 1971, by people who had never heard of Burns Night and were not thinking about it. Before we get to that sentence, and it is shorter than you'd believe, do the thing that keeps this channel running. Subscribe, hit the bell. Now, Scotland has not taken this quietly. Their argument is straightforward. The rest of the world eats lung. It's in dishes across Asia, across Europe, and those countries are not reporting waves of illness because of it. The risk is real but manageable, and it's managed everywhere else. And the deeper complaint is this. That rule was written in 1971, and in the half-century since, nobody has gone back and re-examined it with modern evidence. It just sits there. The American position is equally reasonable, and that's the problem. The rule doesn't single out sheep, doesn't single out Scotland, and wasn't aimed at anyone's culture. It's a blanket hazard rule, and nobody has brought forward the evidence to change it, so they have argued. In 2014, Britain's Environment Secretary, Owen Paterson, flew to Washington and raised it directly with the US Agriculture Secretary, Tom Vilsack. Nothing moved. The following year, Scotland's Rural Affairs Secretary, Richard Lochhead, met with a USDA Undersecretary and came home saying draft rules were coming and that haggis could be on American plates by 2017. 2017 came and went, and here is the genuinely deflating answer to all of it. This isn't a fight Scotland is losing, it's a fight nobody in Washington has enough reason to have. Somebody knew. They just didn't say it out loud. Here is the sentence that did it. Livestock lungs shall not be saved for use as human food. That's the whole thing. 11 words. No preamble, no explanation. Published on June 17, 1971, and filed at Title 9 of the Code of Federal Regulations, Section 310.16. It is still there today. You can look it up yourself in about 40 seconds. Now read it again and notice what isn't in it. It doesn't say sheep. It doesn't say haggis. It doesn't say Scotland. It says livestock, which means cattle, pigs, goats, sheep, everything. Every lung, from every animal, in every American slaughterhouse operating under federal inspection. And notice what the rule permits, because this is the detail that stings. Those lungs aren't destroyed. Provided they're not diseased, they can still be sold, for pet food, or to pharmaceutical manufacturers. They just have to be labeled inedible. So the organ at the heart of Scotland's national dish is, in the eyes of American law, perfectly fine for your dog and not for you. And the rule applies in both directions. This isn't an import ban. Importing haggis from Edinburgh is illegal, and making it in a butcher shop in Brooklyn, with American sheep, is equally illegal. Same rule, same wall. There is no clever workaround, which is why nobody found one for 50 years. And then, 18 years later, a second lock went on the same door, a completely separate thing that almost every article about haggis gets wrong. In 1989, after mad cow disease appeared in Britain, the United States barred imports of British beef and lamb outright. That's a different ban, for a different reason, from a different decade, but the effect stacked. Even if the lung rule vanished tomorrow, that second wall would still be standing, and people smuggled it anyway, because of course they did. This is, without question, the least glamorous black market in America. It runs north. Some Canadian butchers make the traditional version despite a parallel ban of their own, so Americans drive up, buy it, and drive back with it in the trunk. Others mail it. Others pack it into a suitcase wrapped in t-shirts and hope nobody at the airport is curious. And a small number of people have gone all the way and slaughtered a lamb themselves to get at what they needed. Customs figures reported by the New York Times give you a sense of the scale. Over a 4-year stretch, agents seized roughly 17,300 ruminant byproducts at airports and along the Canadian border, though that total covers goat and elk products too, not just haggis. It's a tiny number against everything customs takes in a year. And that's the point. Nobody's getting rich. There's no cartel. It is an entire smuggling operation made out of homesickness. So where does that leave you if you want some? Can you buy real haggis in America today? No. 55 years, and the answer is still no. But can you buy haggis? Absolutely. American producers make it without lung. It's on shelves right now, and it's what gets served at every Burns night supper in the country. Purists are blunt about the result. One Scottish journalist wrote that the American version runs to stodge all too easily, which is about as polite as that critique gets. And there has been movement. In January of 2025, Scotland's largest haggis producer announced they'd developed a version built specifically to clear American regulations, using sheep heart in place of the lung to get some of that crumble back, closer to the real thing than anything Americans have had in half a century. Still, by their own admission, not the thing Burns wrote the poem about. Which brings me to what almost everyone gets wrong about this, and it's the reason I wanted to make this episode. We call it the haggis ban. It is not a haggis ban. That sentence from 1971 never had Scotland in its sights, and Scotland was not the only casualty. The same rule quietly took lung dishes off the table for Chinese cooking, for Nepalese cooking, for several European cuisines that had used the same organ for centuries. All of them living in America, all of them losing a dish on the same day, for the same reason. But you have never heard about those, and you have heard about haggis. Why? Because Scotland had a national poet, it had a holiday on the calendar, it had a diaspora with government ministers willing to fly to Washington and argue about it in public. The others just quietly stopped making the dish. So that's the file. Not a poisoning, not a scandal, not even really a ban on the thing everybody thinks it banned. Just a single flat sentence, written for a slaughterhouse, that reached out and edited what a few million people were allowed to eat at their own family table. And the only reason you're hearing about one of those cuisines, and not the others, is that one of them was loud enough to be heard. So tell me below, is 55 years long enough, or is the rule doing exactly what it should? I read them. Next week, we open another file. Until then, mind what's on your plate.